All right, we are back. It's good vibes time. I'm Martin Falls. Joining us now, as always, Debbie Cox DeNova, and we're going to talk about some very interesting things today because understanding dreams.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people out there watching, recurrent dreams. Always dream I'm flying a helicopter through power lines, or the car is coming to a cliff and it stops right before. And different people have told me different things, but how do you understand your dreams?
Yes. So this conversation has been studied and looked at throughout time, right? And one of the most famous looks at it was from Dr. Sigmund Freud, who said that dreams could be boiled down to symbology. Now, a lot of that has been debunked since, but there's a lot to learn from both the sleep structure, the way that our bodies sleep and dream, and also what we can do to sort of interpret it and help support those different parts of the cycles of our sleep. All right. So basically, our sleep is broken down into what's called ultradian cycles, 90-minute ultradian cycles, roughly. Okay. First part of the sleep is what's called slow wave sleep or non-REM sleep. And then the second part is REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. And this is where we're paralyzed and we're having those deep dreams. So as the cycles go, the more cycles you have through the night, the more ultradian cycles, the more REM sleep happens. And so each part of the cycle of sleep has its own distinct role to play. In the first part, where you're having slow wave and non-REM sleep, you're basically experiencing a lot of serotonin. So that's that neuromodulator that's associated with bliss, right? You have, interestingly enough, norepinephrine, which is normally associated with activity, right, going forward. That's a little bit of that is present. So you can actually move during slow wave sleep. If you think about the earlier part of the night, you can roll over, right? You have an absence of activity in your prefrontal cortex. You have an absence of activity in the part of your brain that kind of is involved in consciousness and also your conscience, okay? And so basically you are going into this sort of blissful state, the serotonin, and you're still a little bit able to move. And what they found is that in that state of sleep, your body is processing motor skills. So if you're learning something like dance, or if you're an athlete and you're learning new movements, this part of the sleep cycle is where all of that is sort of being worked out in your body, and also detail-oriented things. So if you're studying something, if you're learning something, even if you're learning the map out of a new place that you've been to, all of that happens here. Now, this is good news for those people who are only getting and I talk to a lot of people like this, 3 to 4 hours of sleep, and then they wake up, right? And if you're an athlete, or if you're someone who's concerned about performance, if you're getting that earlier stage of sleep, now, obviously, it's better if you get full sleep. But if you're only getting 3 to 4 hours and then you're waking up, know that your performance, if you've already learned what you're supposed to, so if you're an athlete who's already sort of synced in how to do something, or a dancer, if you've gotten that level of sleep, you should be able to perform fairly well, okay? People who have been deprived in these horrible sleep studies, people who have been deprived of slow wave or non-REM sleep tend to have a problem, perform very poorly when it comes to learning motor skills and detail-oriented learning. Okay. Now, the interesting part is when we move into rapid eye movement. This is where we're actually paralyzed. There's no norepinephrine. There is no serotonin. And basically what happens is during this stage, you start to have very vivid dreams, hallucinations. Okay. So anything that you've experienced during the day sort of starts to replay in a way, or just kind of twisted versions of it. And basically what you're doing is akin to therapy. It's your body's natural way of therapy. And what happens during that time is that the emotional connections that you make with certain things, a lot of what is not needed is dumped during that time. So this helps you to be able to process things. So if you have something traumatic that happens in your life, you never forget the trauma. That's not a thing that happens. You will always remember traumatic things that happen. What happens when you go to therapy is that you're trying to uncouple the intense emotion that's associated with what happened so that you can actually process through. We talk talked about this before, you walk around that. You walk outside, you walk around the house like you've done 1,000 other times, and there's a hose there, and you walk out one time, and a black moccasin comes out and slithers out, and you jump. And all of a sudden, you have this flood of the neuromodulator acetylcholine, which is about focus. And what basically happens is your body is rewired to associate not only everything that happened during that time, but even leading up to it to warn you for the future. Now, every time you walk outside of the house, round that corner and see that hose, it's a different experience than it ever was before because you're looking for snakes.
So let me ask you, the norepinephrine stage, because sometimes I wake up, I got pillows all over the place, blankets that thrown. That will never happen in REM sleep.
No,
right?
no, you should be paralyzed during REM sleep.
Yeah.
So if you have things knocked all over the place, it's typically happening during that earlier phase of sleep. And a lot of people will think, well, these nightmares that I have, what sleep scientists say is it's likely that the nightmares, even though you're processing dreams, is actually happening during that earlier phase of sleep because there's so much emotion that is there. What happens during REM sleep is that the typical emotions that are associated, the neurochemicals that are associated with intense emotions are missing for the first time. Like that's the only time during your life where you're actually not going to have this neurochemical dump when you experience certain things. And that is because you are reprocessing what happened without the reactivity there so that your body can get.
And besides the helicopter flying in the car, I normally have pretty good dreams, so I'm lucky.
At some point in time, toward the end, I'd love to talk about how you can pick apart those dreams because sometimes and oftentimes, it's not what it seems at face value. When you're dreaming about someone that you know or someone from way back when, there's a way that we can dissect this so that you can sort of psychoanalyze yourself in a way and figure out what your dreams may try and be.
And I never told him that because he lives around the corner. I don't want him not coming down the driveway. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we talked about the difference, the alternating cycles and how more and more REM sleep happens. And I know that there was a question about people with depression, anxiety, and how that is associated with dreaming. If you are experiencing that and it's related to your sleep, it's likely related to a lack of REM sleep. Because like I said, the REM sleep is where you're processing all of those emotional connections, right? So you're unloading. So basically your brain is trying to figure out what meaning is worth keeping and what meaning it should be dumped. People who have been deprived of REM sleep tend to be more irritable. The small things become big things. They're catastrophizing a lot. It feels like there's threats everywhere. And we talked a lot about the compartmentalization, right? The ability to be able to look at one thing and disassociate it from other things that have no meaning. When you are lacking REM sleep, it becomes very difficult to do that. It's like everything is connected.
That's hard to do without REM sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So your brain and body are always trying to function in the most efficient way possible. And you can imagine if you've made a false association, like we said before the break, to the hose and the side of the house to a snake, and you're getting scared every time you go around, it is in your body and your brain's best interest to make a new association of that. And that is more likely to happen during REM sleep, where you'll replay that experience minus the emotionality that would happen during your wake states. So all of those neurochemicals that would be associated with being afraid are missing, and you're replaying it. Now, a lot of people will go, well, I wake up from my REM sleep and I'm full of adrenaline. What's likely happening is that you're having the dream and then you jolt awake, and that flood of norepinephrine that norepinephrine that was not there before is now flooded into your system. So there's sort of a pairing. Sometimes, in rare cases, people will continue to be paralyzed after they wake up. So that paralysis sort of creep in, which is a terrifying experience, right? Or some of the hallucinating from the dream state will actually follow you into waking state. So it's fascinating how the body and the brain are structured, but it's important to note that there are a couple of therapies actually that are used. In one, there's ketamine treatment. They sort of are most closely doing what REM sleep does for you. So if you're missing REM sleep and you really want to be able to start emotionally processing, some things to look into are ketamine therapy, which helps you also to dissociate the emotionality from these thoughts. There are some studies on psilocybin as well, but ketamine has been legalized everywhere. And then there's something called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So that's those lateralized eye movements that we talked about before, where you're quieting your amygdala as you remember something that was traumatic and allowing yourself to process it in a different way, minus the fear and anxiety that would typically be associated with
Let me ask you this, because this happens to me quite often being in the news business. I could be having the best dream in the world, and the phone rings. And it wakes me up, and I have not completed the dream.
Right. Frustrating.
That drives me crazy.
It's like being interrupted in the middle of a therapy session, really is what it is. And we have a lot of attachment to, because there's a lot of meaning there. There really is a lot of meaning for us in that processing. That's why we want to share our dreams. Like, they just seem so intensely important for us, right? We want to talk about them with other people. So if you want to support yourself, first of all, if you want more slow wave, non-REM sleep because you're trying to learn something and you want to be really good at it, resistance training exercises tend to increase the amount of slow wave or non-REM sleep that you get. Specifically resistance training, not cardiovascular, okay? And what you want to do too is keep a journal next to your bed, a sleep journal. We've talked about that before, right? Super simple. Log what time you're going to bed and what time you're waking up. Research actually shows, and this may be something, again, if you're getting not enough sleep, that consistency of sleep is more important than the amount of sleep that you get. So in other words, it's better for you to get 6 hours of sleep consistently every night, going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, than to get 10 hours and then 8 hours and then 4 hours, right? Because there's that inconsistency. For whatever reason, if you want to perform better during the day, consistency, even if it's less sleep, which is pretty fascinating.
And your body wants consistency, right?
Your body wants consistency. Now, if you want to make sure that you're supporting yourself with the not interrupting the sleep cycles, limit your amount of water that you have before you go to bed. Alcohol and THC may make you feel as though you're coming down, but it actually disrupts the quality of sleep and the depth of sleep that you get. So you might want to steer away from that. Anything that's going to not disrupt the sleep pattern.
So as we wind down the show, I don't know what happened to Harry after the alligator. Got it.
Here's what you can do about that. In your sleep journal, what you want to do is identify with every single person, animal, and object even in your dream, and write from that perspective, because it's all you.
Right.
Everything in your dream is representative of some part of you. So you be Harry, and you'll write Harry's experience of almost being eaten by the alligator, whatever it is. Write it out. Write out what the alligator is experiencing. Write out what you're experiencing. And from that, you'll get the cleanest experience of what you can do with these dreams and the meanings that you make. You can also set intentions before you go to bed, and this has been shown. And your subconscious mind will help you work, and there can be a tethering between the waking state and the sleep state just from your intentions alone. Like, I really want to think about a red apple, and you eventually.
All right, this is cool stuff. So there you go, Harry. Be careful on the driveway, and we'll see you next week on Good Vibes.